This is Slappy Pappy. Now, Slappy Pappy is one of my favorite builds I've built. This build is super fun to play, and it doesn't utilize too many broken weapons, just kind of mid-tier to good-tier weapons, so you don't have to worry about anyone complaining about the build. So let's hop right into this. By the way, guys, if you guys could please like and subscribe, it would make me so happy. It motivates me to make more content and put out more content for you guys. And yeah, let's get into it. Now I know I used a Zimmerman, come on. But it kind of is like the only thing that really makes this build as viable as it is, because as much as it looks like it might be super powerful, it's really not as incredible as you might think. It is still a very great build, but it will lose to the double Zimmerman meta or the missile boats or people running double needle launcher. It's going to lose to that. But this is just a really fun build to run. So yes, I did put a Zimmerman on it, but it's what makes this build kind of viable. The thing about the Zimmerman that makes it so good on this build is the direct hit adjustment of 205. Now this is your multiplier for damage on a staggered enemy, and 205 is really high. So as you'll probably notice, we're running a lot of high stagger weapons. So having weapons that do a lot of damage while they're staggered kind of helps with our explosiveness in damage that we really need. So the Zimmerman is really, really good for that, and that's kind of why I chose the Zimmerman over anything else. The Laser Lance is such a fun part of this build. It's really good for its explosive attack power, as well as even if you just click the button without charging it up, it's really good for just a quick short jab that might help you get that little bit of stagger that you might need. Now, the thing about the Laser Lance is its lunge is so good. Sometimes I don't even use it to lunge at my enemy. I more like lunge close to my enemy, kind of use it as a distance closer instead of trying to like hit my enemy with it, if that makes any sense. The Laser Lance also does so much damage, and it actually isn't that heavy to run. It is generally pretty heavy, but it's not that heavy. So it kind of just fit on this build really nicely, and it made it super fun. Now the Earshot is such a good weapon on this build. Basically what I use it for is stagger. One hit with an Earshot, and most builds are staggered. If not, it will get them super close. And the thing about the Earshot is the blast radius is so big. If you just slightly fly up and shoot it down on your enemy, you're gonna hit them for a decent amount of damage, just because of that blast radius being so huge. Now the issue with the Earshot is that it has a 12.8 second delay in between shots, which is a massive issue sometimes. It just makes you have to pick those shots and play as smart as possible. The Earshot's also pretty heavy to carry, which is why we're running more of a middleweight build rather than trying to make it a lightweight build. Now I have the Huxley on my other shoulder. The Huxley is an 8-round burst bullet orbit that's going to allow me to poke away damage at people, which is something this build lacked before I put it on, as well as I'm going to be able to get a bit of extra stagger, as it's actually not too bad for stagger. Now moving on to the actual parts of this build, I decided I was going to go with the VP44D helmet, as one, it looks really, really cool, and two, has a very good attitude stability. Now this helmet isn't going to be the best helmet in the game, but I used it because it's a very viable helmet, while making this build look like 8,000 times better. It looks so cool with this helmet on. I had to keep it. I had to keep it on. Not only that, but this helmet is also pretty dang light. It isn't the lightest thing in the world, but it's a lot lighter than some of the other better helmets in the game. So this helmet just fit perfectly onto this build, and that's why I use it. Now for the core, I decided to go with the Mind Alpha. Now the Mind Alpha, the reason I chose it is because it actually has a really good defense and a lot of AP, which is something this build was kind of lacking before I put it on. And it really helped make the build kind of a lot more sturdy and defensive, while keeping it almost kind of mobile, because all the other cores around its weight seem to make you slower, and I was trying to stay as fast as possible, as well as it also is pretty dang good for attitude stability, and it also looks really cool. Moving on, I decided to go with more of a lightweight arm in the VP46D, as things were getting pretty heavy and hard for the Howl legs to hold. So I decided to go with something really light, and the VP46D have a really good balance in firearm specialization and melee specialization. And it was really important to me that I had both of those as a pretty dang high number, as I'm running both a really good firearm and a melee weapon. So I wanted to optimize that as much as I possibly could. Now, the recoil control on these aren't very good, but it also doesn't matter nearly as much with the shotguns as it would with like a rifle. And that's why I chose these arms for this build, because they're just super solid and well balanced between firearm spec and melee spec. Now we move on to the Howl legs. Now the Howl legs were able to carry all the stuff I wanted on this build while not being too heavy and keeping me generally mobile. As you can probably notice, if I swap legs to other things that might work here, they're generally just a lot slower than the Howl legs, which is something I really wanted to avoid, because I felt as though this build needed to stay at least the speed it was, and I didn't want to reduce that whatsoever. So these Howl legs have really good attitude stability, and a pretty dang good load limit that allows you to just carry whatever the heck you want while keeping you generally mobile. Now moving on to the booster, this one's a bit of a weird one, but I decided to go with the BSTG2. These boosters are really good for your thrust along the ground, so it's going to keep you mobile while you're just kind of gliding around on the ground, which is something I wanted to stay pretty good with, as well as its melee attack thrust is actually pretty decent in comparison to some of the other really good boosters. So these boosters is what kind of balanced out the build a bit and kept me pretty dang quick, while allowing me to thrust forward still quite a bit. Now, the main issue with these boosters is that the quick boost energy consumption is quite high. Now, we did find a way to balance this out with our generator choice, so keep watching and I'll explain it all then. Now, I am rocking the Oculus as our FCS. This is due to the fact we have a Zimmerman on our right hand, and of course we're going to want as good close range tracking as possible with a shotgun. Now, of course, we're going with the Santai generator. Now, as I mentioned before, our energy consumption when we quick boost is really high. So the Santai, with its extremely large energy capacity at 4,420, is going to help balance that out. And I found myself being able to quick boost 7 times in a row before I ran out of energy. The Santai is my favorite generator to run on most of my builds. The only issues with it are really its weight at 10,000 and its energy firearm spec at 88. So this really isn't the generator you're going to be wanting to run when you're running laser weapons and things like that. Now, this doesn't affect our laser lance in any way, shape, or form, because the energy firearm spec doesn't count for any melee weapons whatsoever. The Santai also has a pretty good energy recharge delay stat. So again, I really do like this generator, and this is the generator you're gonna want to run on this build. I forgot to mention that your energy firearm spec is your multiplier on damage for energy weapons. Now, 88 means you're losing 12%, whereas if it was 112%, you'd be gaining 12% damage on laser weapons. Next up, for the expansion, I went with the assault armor. This allows me to chain my attacks together well, while almost being able to kill someone with one full chain, as well as having a counter to other people's assault armor, because I have an absolute terrible tendency to run straight into them. Really hope you enjoyed this video. That's it for the build guide part of this. I'm going to have some gameplay at the end. I really hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all soon. Peace. Now, before I go and show you guys the PvP gameplay of me using this build, I just wanted to make sure you guys knew how awesome this build looks. It looks so incredibly cool. And yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.
No! God, please!
Emotional damage.
Skill issue.
Bye, have a great time.
God!